Hey, everybody. Welcome to an extra special bonus episode. This would be the second one we've done here on Sports Frenzy 2.0. It is Tuesday night, October the 11th, 2022. I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane. I know you're disappointed because when you hear me talking about a bonus episode, that means that we're not going to be able to get our normal Sports Frenzy episode out to you Thursday morning. Rock and roll has taken over this week. The Conquistador and I are going to see a concert, and it is going to screw up our taping schedule. So you're going to get your bonus episode here with me for about 20 to 25 minutes. Just to remind you, don't forget about us. We haven't forgotten about you. We will have an episode posted Thursday night, October the 13th. And then, of course, the weekend edition will hit Saturday morning the 15th, just like always. But here to give you a little taste of what we're going to be talking about in a couple days on Sports Frenzy 2.0 this week. Of course, the baseball playoffs are in full swing. The first ever best of three wild card round is over. And this is why I'm not a betting man, is because the four teams that I picked, the Tampa Bay Rays, the St. Louis Cardinals, the Toronto Blue Jays, and of course, the New York Mets, all got beat in the first round. Of course, home field advantage doesn't seem to make a big difference because the whole twist here with this new wild card format was that instead of being that one and done, one game elimination we've had in the past, now this wild card round is best of three. But all three games are played at the home field of the higher seed. Or lower seed, however you want to look at it. The better team gets all three games at home. Mets lose 2 out of 3 to the San Diego Padres at Citi Field. Disappointing for them, of course, because they expected with Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom to have no problems getting through a best of three. And unfortunately for them, Max Scherzer did not show up in game one. That put him behind the 8 ball. deGrom came back in game two, pitched well enough where they were able to force a game three. But unfortunately, Chris Bassett, who they acquired from the Oakland A's, was miserable. So the Padres finally, after, in my opinion, underachieving, after bringing in Juan Soto, after making all these moves, all these deals, bringing in Brandon Drury, and putting together a stacked lineup, a stacked roster, finally look like they're starting to play up to the level that we expected when they made all these moves at the end of July. Now, the other three series only went 2 games. The one home team to win was the Cleveland Guardians as they beat the Tampa Bay Rays in 2. Unfortunately for me, that was the one series I ended up watching the most of, and there was no offense in that series whatsoever. I believe grand total of 24 innings in 2 games because the second game went 15. 24 innings, 4 total runs. Ouch. talk about something that could help you get over insomnia. The Phillies in St. Louis take 2 from the Cardinals and move on. That one really surprised me because kind of like the San Diego Padres, the Phillies seemed like they were just trying to give away their wild card slot. But of course, the Brewers, the one team that was close enough, if they had been able to step up, could have taken it. They also went in the tank. Well, now the Phillies have turned it around because as of today, as we're taping, the Phillies have also gone down to Atlanta and beaten the Braves in Game 1 of the NLDS. So the Phillies are now up 1-0 on the Braves after taking the first 2, and you want to call it a sweep? They swept the Cardinals in St. Louis. Now, of course, in this round, the good thing for the Phillies is they will actually get to play some home games. And then this massive, titanic comeback from the Houston Astros just finished up. The Mariners jumped out to a huge lead after they swept the Toronto Blue Jays up in Canada. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised by it. The Padres, the Blue Jays, those two lineups, those two rosters, they're too good to fail, yet the Blue Jays now have. And they did it in spectacular fashion. So the red-hot Seattle Mariners move on, and then it looked like they were going to keep the momentum going today against the Astros, but 3-run walk-off home run from Yordan Alvarez. Astros come back. We talked about Max Scherzer not having a great game in the playoffs. Justin Verlander, the de facto American League Cy Young Award winner, did not look good at all in Game 1 for the Astros, but they come back. They overcome that. So the Astros hold serve, win the first game versus the Mariners in Houston. Of course, we got the Yankees and the Guardians coming up, as well as the Dodgers hosting those San Diego Padres. Not feeling really good about that, not just because the Dodgers posted the best record in baseball, but because from what I recall following the box scores throughout the season, the Padres did not play well against the Dodgers. Before we wrap up this little baseball segue here, the Cardinals getting knocked out by the Phillies means that the careers of Albert Pujols and Yadier Molina, 2 Hall of Famers, are done. When you think about the fact that the most likely NL MVP for 2022, Paul Goldschmidt, is on that roster, as is Nolan Arenado. Lots of potential Hall of Fame accolades on the 2022 Cardinals, but they could not get it done in the postseason. The NFL, of course, Dave and I will cover in its entirety. We'll look back at Week 5, look ahead to Week 6, discuss our teams, the Bears, the Dolphins, and the Buccaneers. But the one thing that I want to touch on here on the bonus episode is this roughing the passer controversy that has come up here, especially this past weekend. Now, we all know what happened the weekend before with Tua Tagovailoa of the Dolphins and his issues with concussions, and is the concussion protocol working? It's been tweaked. It's been fixed in an agreement between the NFL and the Players Association. But now We saw Tom Brady get a really cheap roughing the passer call, helping the Buccaneers secure a victory over the Falcons. I believe it was Troy Aikman on Monday Night Football, because there was a very controversial call in that game with the Raiders and the Chiefs, where I believe it was Chris Young of the Kansas City Chiefs fell on Derek Carr, the quarterback for the Raiders. There was a fumble involved. There is a stipulation in the rules that says if a defensive player puts his full weight on a quarterback, he will get called for roughing the passer. Does it stink? Yeah, it stinks. And as Troy Aikman said, we need to take off the dresses here. And this is a guy who suffered multiple concussions when he was playing for the Dallas Cowboys. I agree with him. I really do. And these penalties, I believe it was him. If it wasn't him, it had to be Joe Buck in that booth, said that why don't we make these calls reviewable? Now, we tried this, remember, a couple years ago with pass interference, because we were all getting sick and tired of pass interference calls that either were getting made that didn't look like pass interference, or calls that weren't getting flagged that were blatant to us sitting at home watching on our big, huge HD TVs. So they won't review them. I guarantee you they'll never put them up for review. I honestly don't know how they can fix the problem, because the quarterbacks are obviously the faces of the franchises. They're the stars. They're in all the commercials. They're the names we know first and foremost. The league is trying to protect those commodities. They don't need a 300-pound defensive lineman falling on a quarterback, crushing his ribs, smashing his shoulder into the ground, knocking him out for 6 to 8 weeks or potentially the season. Same thing with the rule they enacted a few years back where they said you can't go low. A lot of people look at that as the Brady rule, because remember, Tom Brady got hit low once, and that was one of the few seasons where he suffered a major injury. We've seen it with Carson Palmer going way, way back. So there's a penalty if you hit a quarterback too low. There's a penalty if you drive a quarterback into the ground. There's a penalty if you forcibly throw a quarterback to the ground. And while I agree with Troy Aikman, it's time to take the dresses off. It'd be nice if they would review these calls, these plays. They won't review them if they wouldn't review pass interference in that 1 year abysmal failure, because it was obvious the refs didn't want to mess with replay when it came to PI. They're not going to do it with roughing the passer. They're just not. Of course, we'll be talking about NASCAR this week. We'll be talking about what happened at the Charlotte Roval, and we'll be looking forward to the South Point 400 from Las Vegas this coming weekend. One thing I'll bring up real quick, Stewart-Haas Racing not having a good week. Kevin Harvick and Stewart-Haas Racing docked 100 points each, driver and owner points. Crew chief Rodney Childers suspended 4 races, fined $100,000 for an unapproved part modification. There is an appeal pending on that, but now this past race at Charlotte, another one of their drivers, Cole Custer, gets docked 50 points. driver and owner points. So Stewart-Haas Racing gets nailed for another 50 points. And his crew chief, again, 100,000 fine. He's got an indefinite suspension because it looks like he slowed down to manipulate the outcome of the race. The Charlotte race was a cut race where you had 4 drivers eliminated. We've seen stuff like this in the past with Clint Boyer and Jeff Gordon. It'll be interesting to see if NASCAR goes any further with this and does like they did with the Jeff Gordon, Clint Boyer situation and add somebody back in if they deem that Kyle Larson was unfairly affected by this. I don't think they will. But this is a lot of bad press for Stewart-Haas Racing. All right, before I move on to a quick preview of the weekend edition, what fun would it be if I didn't at least give you one sports Red Foreman dumbass of the week here on my own? Watching that game last night between the Raiders and the Chiefs, I'm calling out Marquez Valdez-Scantling of the Chiefs, their wide receiver. I noticed in a close-up during the game, he is wearing a gaudy, thick diamond bracelet as he's playing football. And there are stories, you can look them up, where players have lost diamond earrings. Baseball players, Javi Baez, formerly the Cubs, I know he had an issue one time during a Tigers game here this past year. Don't wear the bling out on the field. How stupid are you? Who knows how much money that diamond bracelet cost? What happens if it gets broken, torn off, the settings burst, and all those diamonds fly off every which way? Are we going to stop the game? This should be a rule that all these prima donna players that like to show off how much money they've got as overpaid, pampered professional athletes, we should tell them, no, you don't do this. You don't wear this stuff out on the field. All right, moving on to the weekend edition. Dave and I will talk about new music from Queensryche. I will review the Disney Plus special, Werewolf by Night. We also have some news about Titans and Doom Patrol and The Boys, Season 4 coming up next year, hopefully. But, of course, I'll take the scraps, the last-minute stuff that's just popped here today, and discuss that, save the good stuff for the weekend edition with the Conquistador. If you care about Blink-182, I really don't, but I know there's a lot of people out there that love Blink-182. Good news for you. They are reuniting, putting out new music at some point, and going on a world tour. You know how much I can't stand these talk show hosts that we have to deal with in this day and age. You know I can't stand Jimmy Kimmel. We're finally rid of Samantha Bee. I'd love to get rid of Stephen Colbert and John Oliver. These arrogant, pompous jerks that want to tell us all how to live. They've got the whole I'm right, you're wrong mentality worked out to perfection. Well, unfortunately, one of them is going away. Or fortunately. Trevor Noah is leaving The Daily Show. I've never been a big fan. I know some people who think he's not quite as bad as the rest. I can see that. But those stupid Uber Eats commercials, I'm so glad his run is over there. Now, the new ones are awful too, but watching him try to eat soap just wasn't funny. It was just juvenile and stupid. Now, the thing is, if you look inside the numbers, The Daily Show, ever since Jon Stewart left, the ratings have been plummeting. Trevor Noah did not help issues, no matter how much you want to believe the mass media and how much they propped him up as a superstar. None of these guys are Leno, Letterman, or Carson, and they never will be. Once again, the West Coast, especially Disney, find new and exciting ways to hose their residents, their denizens, and anybody who wants to visit. Disneyland. I didn't realize there were so many different levels and tiers to the one day, one park admission ticket, but from what I read, the tier 5 ticket is the most popular. Well, guess what, kids? Now it is going up here in October 2022 to $169. One person, one day, one park. That particular ticket has gone up 36% in the past 5 years. You can blame who you want. You can blame the rat. You can blame the ridiculous economics of the state of California. You can blame Gavin Newsom. I prefer to blame him just because I hate him. I don't see how he's really at fault here, but I just like to blame him because he's just a jerk. All right. Marvel. We called this a couple weeks ago. We said when Blade lost its director, Basim Tariq, we said this could screw up everything that's going on with Phase 6 of the Marvel Universe. Now, Phase 4, the cinematic universe, is ending with the upcoming Black Panther Wakanda Forever movie. But Blade was set to be a part of Phase 6, is my understanding. Now, with Basim Tariq leaving, production is now shut down on Blade, and that has pushed everything back in Phase 6, and it has caused a mess for Marvel. And I wonder, why can't, again, I don't care about the rat, I don't care about Disney, I'm not going to cry for them. But from a strictly business standpoint, why can't they hold Basim Tariq culpable for causing all these headaches and all these problems for dropping out of Blade? Now, my understanding is it's not health related, so if you just change your mind and decide, $100 million production, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't care if it's tied into a big storyline involving a whole bunch of other movies. I just don't want to do it anymore. How is he not financially liable for some kind of penalty? So Blade gets pushed back from November the 3rd, 2023, all the way back to September the 6th, 2024, and they still don't have a director. And as I said, production shut down. Now, Deadpool 3 pushed back to November the 8th, 2024. Fantastic Four, the reboot of that, yes, the third reboot, pushed back to February the 14th, 2025. And the second part of the Avengers, Part 2, Secret Wars, will now be May the 5th, 2026. The first part of the two-part Avengers saga to close out Phase 6, though, the Kang Dynasty, will stay, as I understand it, in May of 2025. But still, you're pushing these movies back a lot. Sometimes a couple months. In the case of Blade, almost a year. Dave and I have talked about it. We are dying. We're starving for new content, and this is not helping. All right, so finally, to wrap up this extra special bonus episode for you, I have got to have a entertainment world dumbass for you. The Red Foreman dumbass here on our bonus episode is a regular target for me because, again, an obnoxious, arrogant prick. He is one Roger Waters. He's been in the news a lot lately because he's been talking about politics and ripping on people that don't agree with him and fans that go to his shows and they don't want to hear about politics. And of course, he sides with Russia in the whole Russia-Ukraine situation. And he thinks the U.S. is the most evil country in the world. Yet I'm sure he's more than happy to take the money from the people that buy copies of Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall. Now, this is a mini minor dumbass comment. He said far, far worse than this, but you guys know I am a big hard rock fan. In a recent interview on the Joe Rogan podcast, Roger Waters, of course, talks about his passion for singer-songwriters. So, of course, he loves Bob Dylan and Neil Young. Of course, that figures because I can't stand those two either. But he has to single out hard rock and says AC/DC and Eddie Van Halen. He, quote, couldn't care less, unquote, about that type of music. In the end, that's fine. I'm not getting worked up about it. The fact that he doesn't like the music I love actually makes it more appealing for me. But it reminds me of when Eddie Van Halen died and that absolute phony, pretentious, arrogant jerk, David Crosby, couldn't even just say something nice or something decent about Eddie Van Halen when he died. Remember, that was the whole meh comment. There is a group of performers out there that critics love that true rock and roll fans like Dave and I cannot stand. Roger Waters, David Crosby, Neil Young, Bob Dylan, Eric Clapton will begrudgingly admit their place in rock and roll history, but that doesn't mean we have to like them, and we don't have to tolerate the garbage that they spew when they open their mouths. So Roger Waters, wrapping up the Sports Frenzy bonus episode. Dumbass. And just a really despicable human being. And as always, you can find us on Spotify, Anchor, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, Stitcher, Amazon, Audible. Check out the Facebook page. You'll find all of our picks every weekend for football, for NASCAR, links to each and every podcast episode. Thanks for putting up with me. Again, full Sports Frenzy 2.0 episode coming a little later this week. It'll be Thursday night. October the 13th is when you're going to get it. We'll talk to you kids then. See ya.